Some of you may have wondered if your GP can prescribe TRT. As we know, many of them don't really want to get involved with it. We'll discuss this in a minute, so keep watching. So welcome to another episode of Balance My Hormones, and I'm here with Sam today, and we're going over some short topics that seem to come up a lot through the clinic, and we wanted to share those with you so you have some information on what to expect. And in this particular video, we'll be talking about will the NHS prescribe TRT? Sam?
So, in theory, yeah, the GP can prescribe testosterone. The process through the NHS is normally having to visit a GP who genuinely isn't trained in this area. It's not something that the NHS really deal with at that sort of level. They will have to deem you fit to be referred through to someone who is allowed to actually give guidance on and give TRT. So that would be an endocrinologist or sometimes a urologist. And then what will happen is, normally seeing that specialist, they then tell the GP what to prescribe, and then it's the GP who prescribes it, basically being told what to do by the specialist in that area. So the GP, seeing a GP in most cases, and this is what we found, is that you're not speaking to someone who's massively familiar with it. So the issue is getting through that person to then hopefully speak to someone who potentially has the power to then write back to the GP and say you can be prescribed TRT. So there are a lot of hurdles, as you can imagine. The NHS isn't massively aware of this, how to do it, the benefits and the issues that can arise. I think we all know the stories of sort of, antidepressants and things being the primary thing, whatever the weather in lots of situations, rather than looking at maybe hormones alongside considering those things. So the GP, you could see your GP, you've got to go to the endocrinologist or urologist, and then they've got to write back. And another issue with that is actually it's not really something they deal with often in the NHS. They're not particularly up to speed on effective protocols. So guys who have come to us over the years on treatment from those specialists to the GP are generally not having a great time, either on something like Nebido or gels, or even if they are managing to get something more frequent, it's still not been tested thoroughly and dialed in properly for them to get optimal sort of symptom resolution. But in theory, you could, and you might be one of those people that is lucky, meets a GP, it goes through and it goes swimmingly and comes back. I'm yet to see it, but it's definitely a route that you could potentially look at. Would that say that's right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But also keep in mind, there was a recent study that showed that the NHS, in particular in the UK, is woefully below standard for care for testosterone replacement treatment. So they looked internationally and found that the UK's NHS falls below the standard of care. And that's a bit concerning. So obviously NHS, let's clap for them for COVID, but they've got their hands full. But even before COVID, they never really were that adept at working with patients, listening to patients, especially from other patient advocacy groups. It's been noted they don't really listen as part of the culture. Therefore, you end up not getting the care that you deserve. So
yeah, we do hear stories of like instant. I mean, I had that experience myself. Instant dismissal of even mentioning testosterone levels. It just again, it's not often the doctor's fault of not being trained in that area. That's not a fault of their own. They deal with what the NHS provides, but it's quite common to hear that people have gone in and said, look, I'm feeling anxiety, I've got low mood, I've got sexual dysfunction. Can I look at my testosterone? And a lot are even just being dismissed even prior to blood testing. If they get blood testing, they're not actually testing fully, the full breakdown of the hormones, looking at other things that might contribute to similar symptoms as low testosterone.
And they'll be all too happy to prescribe an antidepressant, which may not always be warranted in those cases. And as we've heard from patients report, that it actually made them feel worse. It worsened their sexual side effects and symptoms. So it's not a nice place to be, and we do hear these stories time and again, and not to degrade or demean the NHS because they are a national treasure. But it is an area of weakness that we're not waiting for them to solve the problem. We've taken amongst ourselves as a private service to help patients get that access, and we do it in a way where it's going to be sustainable. We don't think you need to have private health insurance, nor do we think you should have to have health insurance to afford the service at the clinic. And we do understand, just like in America, where many of the guys are like, oh, will my health insurance cover my TRT? There's a similar mentality in the UK because you pay for the NHS through your tax. Your payroll tax, and you expect to have a certain level of coverage, and that's become what everyone's ingrained with. Mm-hmm. However, we try to change that paradigm and say you're empowered, you're liberated to go seek care privately and get an outstanding quality of service from experts that know TRT, so that you're not waiting and waiting and waiting. So that's what we've tried to offer, and this is just something that you should be aware of. Yeah,
so I think that's the thing. In summary, in theory, there is the potential to be prescribed TRT, or what the equivalent of the NHS would say effective TRT is. Unfortunately, a lot of the time it is not, and it's also down to the GPs. The cost falls on them for the ongoing prescribing, so it can actually be a lack of motivation to do that from the outset of seeing a GP to the specialist to come back and then have that cost, unfortunately. But it's an avenue that you can look at, but from experience it's not been massively successful. But there's no harm in exhausting it before you seek out private options.
We just wanted to share with you the options of, yes, can my GP prescribe TRT and how it works, and also what you might expect from our experiences from our patient cohort. So that wraps it up, I believe, for getting TRT from the GP on the NHS.
Yep.
And if you like the content, please do press like, because we plan on making more, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and if you have, thank you for subscribing, and we look forward to doing the next one. You can also get notifications if you want to get reminded whenever we launch a video. We also post them on Facebook as well. So thanks again.
Thank you. Cheers.